everybody. Thanks so much for being here. Sorry for the delay there. There was some technical difficulties, but we're super pleased and honored to have Yair Netanyahu with us here today, taking time out of his Sunday. What is it, 9 o'clock, something over there, Yair?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you're live from Jerusalem. You're in Jerusalem, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Fantastic.
I'm just
Well, yeah, I
trying
know.
to I have
It's been a pretty, huh?
I have a technical difficulty with the Zoom. I hardly ever use it, so I'm not that good with it. Trying to see. Oh, that's better. Yeah.
No worries at all. No worries. So I know everyone's had a very boring weekend, and there's not really that much going on in the U.S. Clearly, we didn't have enough with the coronavirus, so we had to have throw some riots in there as well. What a crazy time. But I want to get right into it, and I want to thank Americans for a Safe Israel first of all, and also Dallas Jewish Monthly for being such great event partners on this event, and also give a shout out to Marion Hill who helped make this event possible. Before we start. Really appreciate all of your help and support. Without further ado, I want to go through a couple of house rules before we start here. If you could, please make sure that you keep your audio muted. Everyone should be on mute, but I know people like to turn their camera on to see their pretty faces. But if you don't mind, just keeping your camera off during the program. And maybe if you'd like to ask a question, I'll ask Yair. Obviously, Yair, if you're not comfortable at any point, let me know. Obviously, you don't have to answer the question, but a lot of the questions already that we have curated have come from DJC members and myself. And if you do have a question or a comment, please feel free to make that comment in the chat box. And other than that, I'd like to introduce Yair Netanyahu. So a little bit about Yair. He's the eldest son of Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu and Sarah Netanyahu. Yair grew up witnessing firsthand his father's successful 2 terms as prime minister, which gave him a very unique perspective on world events and crisis happening in the Middle East. Yair has been at the forefront of many challenges that have faced his country and the region as a whole, and has been committed to the safety and security of Israel and her allies since he was a child. In 2009, Yair joined the Israeli Defense Forces, where he served for 3 years in the IDF spokesperson's unit, and in 2012, Yair began his studies at Hebrew University of Jerusalem, where he completed his Bachelor of Arts degree in International Relations and Humanities. Currently, Yair is a member of Shurat Hadin, Israel Law Center, very impressive, which is at the forefront of fighting terrorism and safeguarding Jewish rights worldwide. Shurat Hadin puts terrorists and their supporters on trial to compensate victims and blocks the funding of terror. It's very important. In addition, Yair frequently lectures and speaks to a variety of groups, including tourists, religious groups, and officials from the U.S. on Israeli history, biblical history in the Holy Land, international support for the State of Israel, and geopolitical topics. Yair's unique life experience and educational background has provided him with a great understanding of the Holy Land, its people, and the importance of keeping Israel safe and secure and keeping the U.S.-Israel relationship strong. I think we can all agree that's incredibly important. So without further ado, welcome Yair to the program. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. So I'll just kind of get right into it here, and just meant to have just a casual conversation, fireside chat style. Of course, anytime if you feel uncomfortable with the questions, I don't think you will, because this is a very pro Netanyahu group we have here. So I think we'll do just fine. First question to start things off here. Was what was the most challenging aspect of growing up with Bibi as your father, and what was the most rewarding aspect in your opinion?
Well, the most challenging is obviously the media. If you think the situation in the US is bad, you should see what's happening in Israel. The media in Israel is vicious, is really nasty, very one-sided, very extreme, radical, lefty, anti-Zionist, hates
Right.
my dad, of course, but hates everything that got to do with Jewish identity and Jewish values, etc. So, and they have no red lines. So, it's constant attacks on your parents and from some point on myself. So that was the hard part, no doubt. The benefit, of course, is having the privilege of, I admire my father. I think he's one of the greatest leaders in in Jewish history, and he's a truly incredible person, and very impressive. People that meet him for the first time are very impressed. Usually it's the other way around. Usually when you meet somebody famous, you're disappointed because it's not the way, if he's in the movie, you know, or in the television, whoever it is. And when people meet my dad, they're surprised on the opposite, you know, on how intelligent and how educated he is, and how, you know, his values is so you know, is so deep. So that's, you know, that's a privilege, you know, to be close to him and to witness all the great things that he did throughout his years.
Sure, absolutely. Is there a particular trait that you would say, or a particular thing that most people would never expect your father to possess?
Well, not a lot of people know that he has a really great sense of humor. He has
Interesting.
really he catches the humor in all this in aspects that you would never find anything funny in it, and he will find funny even in the hardest situations. He will find what funny about it. And he's you know, everybody, he's a good actor, so he knows how to how how to I forgot this word, how to make people, you know, like in a sketch, you know, how to mimic people, etc.
Sure.
So that's
Impersonate.
impersonate, yeah.
I like to see some of that. Do you have a couple clips you can send us?
It's highly confidential.
I'm sure it is. That's funny. Um, if you could tell us a story or a couple of stories, whatever you'd like, from your childhood that stand out most to you. It could be anything.
um, in what way? In like
In connection with your family, a story with your family, connection with your dad, your mom, and your dad.
wow. Uh, that's a tough question.
It
I
doesn't
guess.
have. It can be good or bad. Either way.
Well, I guess my first day in school in first grade, it was
Mhm.
crazy because, you know, my father was a prime minister in the 90s as well, and they brought all the cameramen and all the media, and it was, I think it was thousands of people there with the media and security and all of that. And I got real, and I was really, really shy. I couldn't take even a picture with you know, my mom's camera when we were like traveling, etc. I really hated cameras. I think it's from that reason, because of all this, you know, it took me only, you know, from when you started to have iPhones, when I was 17, 18, when I was starting to be okay again with cameras. Because, you know, when it's in the phone, it's different than what,
Sure.
you know, the cameras that you had in the 90s, you know. So I was really traumatized. It was all over the news, and it was really crazy. You know, as a small kid, it's something you remember.
Absolutely. Any other stories you'd like to share? We can come back to it if you don't have in a
Well, I
second.
don't have a lot of, you know, my memory is not that, you know, sharp from the childhood. You know, it's been many years ago, and I know I look young. I'm not that young.
So it could be something recently. Is there something recently that was interesting that happened?
um, well, you all remember the last days of the Obama administration when
Sadly, yes.
they pushed forward a resolution in the United Nations Security Council condemning Israel.
Hmm.
And I remember that it was Friday night, and we were supposed to have, you know, Shabbat dinner. And my father just, you know, was sitting on the phone calling one leader after another from Africa, from Asia, from South America, trying to convince them not to vote against Israel. And he was alone. Obviously, it was Friday night. And I remember seeing it and understanding how much the the fate of the Jewish people in Israel is important for him. It's like he was so worried about it, and he was so sad about it. And it's nothing that has to, you know, hurt him personally. It was something that's, you know, it's bad for Israel as a country, but he took it so personally, and he was fighting for it like his life is dependent on it. So
Right.
that wasn't that long ago. So just like a small example. of
Yeah.
how
No,
our
I
life.
appreciate that. Let's switch over to topics. Another topic that's very relevant, clearly today, although it's being overshadowed by the riots and protests that are going on, at least in this country. But it's like, where did COVID-19 go, right? It's like, what happened to the coronavirus? It's pretty
Yeah. Ask,
interesting.
ask George
Leading up to the
Soros.
election. Huh?
Ask George Soros what happened in the last few days in the United States. He will know.
Yeah, well, maybe we can get to that at the end here. Yeah. But yeah, so COVID-19. So we all know in Israel, like the U.S., has been hit very hard by the coronavirus, and has unfortunately resulted in thousands of lives lost, tons of people affected that have caught the virus, and obviously caused a lot of economic hardship for millions of people, not just in the U.S. but around the world. What is Israel doing for its citizens during this very tumultuous time? And what resources has Israel rolled out to help its people that other countries have not?
Well, I think one of the most important thing is that my father understood the severity of it from the very first moment and shut down all the borders and all the flights to Israel, and I think and put very strict measures on on quarantine and on all over the country,
Hmm.
and closing down all the restaurants, etc. And because it happened in such an early stage, Israel is now ranked one of the safest countries in the world. And also, the Chancellor of Austria, Sebastian Kurz, said in an interview to an Austrian newspaper that he understood the severity of the coronavirus from in the first stages, thanks to the Prime Minister of Israel, and because of that, he closed all the borders of Austria. And Austria is in a good situation, just as Israel, ranked one of the
Mm.
safest countries, together with Israel in the world, vis-a-vis the coronavirus. So that was something very important that Israel did from the first moment.
Um, in your opinion, how have Israelis handled the coronavirus as a whole? And what is the morale like on the ground right now? What are people feeling? What are their thoughts and sentiments about returning back to the new normal, some say, or normal? And what is keeping the Israeli spirit up?
Well, thank God, because of the measures that Israel did. So the coronavirus, the casualties is very low in Israel. There's only, I think, 200 people that died from it.
Mhm.
And so people stayed at home for months. So, it's hard. But now everything is reopening in Israel. And because our borders are still closed, so we can afford that. And now slowly there's a slow recovery. So, but nobody knows what will happen. It's until there's going to be a vaccine. It's going to be back and forth, back and forth. I think with this waves, first wave, second wave, etc. So, I don't think no country in the world is going to be back to normality in the next year or so. But who knows?
Right, right. Are there, do you notice in certain communities or areas that there's more occurrence of coronavirus happening? Or there are certain areas also to that same point, are there certain areas that are kind of going back to life faster? Like for instance, the Orthodox community, is that people gathering in shuls already or no?
Well, there was a problem in a specific ultra-Orthodox city, but now it's the whole country of Israel is the same. There's no difference, and the whole country is starting to reopen. Restaurants have been opened for the first time this week, etc. So we'll see how it goes.
Good. Hopefully it goes well. To follow that up, do you believe Israel will be the first country in the world to come out with a vaccine? I happen to think that that's a very good probability. And what's the latest news you've heard on that front? And why do you think that that a country of that size, pretty much the size of New Jersey, when it comes to relative size, is able to lead the global community against these monumental challenges?
Well, I have no idea about the vaccine. I know that some scientific institutes in Israel are working hard on it, but so does the rest of the world. But Israel is leading in the world in technology and in especially medical technology. And after Silicon Valley, Israel is the country, the place in the world that has the highest percentage of startups in the world. Not even relatively to the size, just, which is unbelievable for a country of 8 million people, 9 million people. So, Israel is a leader in technology, and I hope so that Israel will find it, but, maybe another country, that's fine too.
Are they using drugs like hydroxychloroquine in Israel and other drugs that are treatments in the meantime, or no?
I have no idea what they do in the hospitals when it comes to medicines and stuff like that.
What's the, do you have any kind of information on what the relationship currently is with the WHO and the relationship with China when it comes to sharing, insider information, I guess, on medicine treatments?
Actually, I don't know too much about that issue, but we have good relations with every country that has good relations with us.
Absolutely. Yeah. Great.
But of course, no country can replace the United States, which is the most important ally that Israel has, and
Amen.
that would change.
Absolutely. No, great. I actually want to take an opportunity. We have a special guest with us today. I think, Yair, I think you know who I'm talking about. Yisrael Stefanski. Let me unmute you real quick, and if you could turn your video on, that would be fantastic. There he is.
Hey, you go.
Hey, how are you?
Good to see you.
Good.
So Yisrael Stefanski, we're pleased to have you here today. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for joining Yair and I for this Fireside Chat. So Yisrael is a good friend of Yair's and also the founder of the Advanced Security Training Institute in Israel. And I wanted to bring him on to tell us a little bit about the organization and kind of give us some background on his recent tour with Yair and anything else you want to share.
Okay, so being raised in Israel and being a kid when the wave of terrorism, Second Intifada, took place and being involved and responding, I saw the need to go out on the field and help out when incidents do take place. And when after 9/11 happened, as an American citizen, I said, the experience that we have in Israel should help Americans, because there's no reason Americans should lose any blood and try to reinvent the wheel. Israel, we fighting terrorism every day. Let's take the techniques that Israel has and to try to educate the Americans so they don't have to go through the same way that we're going through in Israel. And over the years, we've brought in a lot of first responders to come train in Israel. And they went back home and they've changed some policies and training in their cities, and they've helped and saved lives in American cities from the training that they did here in Israel. And that's our goal from Advanced Security Training Institute, is to take the education that we have here in Israel and to try to share it with our friends.
That's amazing. It's amazing. So you went on a tour. Was in 2019 you started a tour with Yair?
Yes.
What was that about? How did that go?
That was because we want to, while we meet with first responders, we want to get the opportunity to speak to the general community as well about things that are going on in Israel. So it was a good trip to go on. People have asked. They had an interest in hearing Yair to talk about Israel. So I said, yeah, it's a good idea.
That's great. What was the response like? Did you get any kind of interesting responses? Any particular states that stuck out to you? I know we would love to have you here in Texas. You're always welcome here.
I've never been to Texas. I really want to, and I have a lot of friends from Texas, and I really want to visit. And I'll definitely do it as soon as the coronavirus is over. Well, we've been relatively close to you in Alabama, which is I've never been there before. It's really beautiful state and warm people, and they welcomed me like amazing and really great people. And
Southern hospitality, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I really enjoyed it. Very similar to Texas, I heard.
Is there a state, you can be honest, is there a state that you're like, not for me?
Well, every state has its charm.
That's a good political answer. Fair enough. So also, if in your opinion, and this could go to I guess either one of you, Yisrael or Yair, but in your opinion, what is Israel's single biggest security threat today, and how is Israel prepared for it? I figured that you guys would have some good insight, obviously, on that.
Is it from me or Israel?
It could be for either one of you.
Yair, you go first, and then I'll.
All right. So, in my opinion, Israel has two big threats. One is from the outside, which is obviously Iran, and its proxies through Syria and Lebanon. But the head of the snake is Iran. That's a country that's developing a nuclear weapon and declaring its will to annihilate Israel and also annihilate other countries in the Middle East and threatens the United States. Is a danger. It's a grave danger, not only for Israel, but of course for America and for the entire world and for the Arab world. And they're trying to build an empire throughout the Middle East, from Iraq to Syria, all the way to the Israeli border with Syria, and also with Gaza. So that's a big threat to Israel. I think the second threat is more. It's harder to define because it's an internal threat. It's a threat from a lot of foreign NGOs, very radical, financed by foreign government and by hostile entities like George Soros' Open Society, that crumbles the Israeli society from within. They are flooded with money from Europe and from Soros and from all these and all of these foreign organizations, and they are trying to abolish the Jewish identity of the country from within, trying to fight every Jewish characteristic of the country, and also fighting very hard to flood Israel with immigrants from Africa, from the Middle East, from Asia, and just make the Jewish people a minority in Israel, although it's the only Jewish state in the world. And of course, fighting to make Israel give away Judea and Samaria and all of the heartland of Israel. And these organizations have been found themselves very rooted in the deep state of Israel, in the justice system and in the police, etc., etc. And I think this is a big threat for Israel to, eventually collapse from within if we don't restrict this problem.
Gotcha, understood. Have the rules of military engagement changed in Israel over the years? Can you explain how that's evolved and what kind of protocols are currently in place? I know that people have all sorts of opinions regarding rules of engagement these days.
In the army, you mean?
Yes.
Well, so Israel is competing on its own in the competition of the most moral army in the world. No other army and no other country competes with us in this stupid competition. We have rules of engagement that no other country in the world has. It basically every small action of the military, even in the heat of a war, with Gaza, with Lebanon, is need to be authorized by sort of like attorneys, like judicial bureaucracy, and this results a lot of times in the death of Israeli soldiers. And because we put the lives of the civilians of our enemy higher up than the lives of our own soldiers, and I think this is wrong. I think this is crazy. I think no other country in the world, whether it's Britain or France or even the United States, is doing this stuff, and we're pretty much fighting with one arm tied behind our back when we get to wars with the most vicious and nasty terror organizations in the world, like Hamas and Hezbollah. And it's part of the problem that I talked before about all this, the deep state in Israel, that being funded and being educated by this radical, hostile foreign NGOs, sadly it's found a grip in the Israeli army as well.
How do you change that? Israel, you want to just give us your thoughts on that? Like, how does that evolve?
It's called better education that the soldiers need, and you need the right commander to have the right understanding that the IDF is made to protect the Jewish, the citizens of Israel. It's a Jewish country, and our lives are important.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yisrael, any final thoughts before we say, I guess, goodbye over here to you?
Final thoughts. I mean, I hope the United States calms down and people go back to work and life, and in both ways, from the virus and the riots that are going on right now. And America should be strong. A strong America makes it a strong Israel.
I couldn't agree more. Well, thank you, Yisrael, for being here. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
So, switching to Israeli media here. I know that's one of your favorite topics, Yair. And actually, before we get into that, I actually want to ask you also, just to lead off before that, the U.S.-Israel relationship really has never been stronger. At least most conservatives don't think it's been stronger since President Trump took office. Is the relationship as strong as it appears on television, in the media and the news, and to what do you attribute that to?
Correct. Well, Israel and America has always been best of friends, but of course, it's never been in such a good relationship since the Trump administration. And I think it's because, the Trump administration understands that the threats to Israel is the same as the threats to America, that Iran is an existential threat to America, not the same way it is to Israel. Of course, it's much more existential threat to Israel than to America, but it's a grave, grave danger for America as well. And that our interests are the same. The radical Islamists they don't hate America because it supports Israel. They hate Israel because it see it as a little America in the heart of the Middle East. So it goes the other way around. They call Israel the little Satan and America the big Satan. So, we have the same values. We have the same Christian, Judeo-Christian civilization. And, we come from the same place. We believe in democracy. We believe in freedom, in liberty. We believe, so, there's no reason that Israel and America won't be best friends. And sadly, in the previous administration, we had problems because the administration didn't see it this way. And it was proven wrong because, the foreign policy of the previous administration failed everywhere you look, whether it's in the Middle East or Asia or everywhere else. So I think it's the understanding of this administration that Israel and America has the same values and the same interests.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. How has the treatment of the left-wing media in Israel been towards you and your family, in your own experience? And what have those interactions been like, as much as you'd like to share?
Well, think about it. In Israel, the media market is strangled in this bureaucracy of, Soviet-style committees that don't let free markets happen in the media. So let's take example television. You only have two television station, mainstream, let's call it, that broadcast news. And one is like MSNBC and one is like CNN. So you have no equivalent of Fox News in Israel. And the way MSNBC treats Trump is super fair and balanced and supportive compared to what the Israeli media is treating my dad. So you can figure out how bad it is. It's really, really bad. It's really reminds you, like almost North Korea style television, really Soviet style propaganda. They don't broadcast news. even they'll find a way how to put propaganda against conservatives and against my dad, even in the broadcast, in the forecast of the weather. They'll find a way to push it forward. It's like unbelievable. It's real, Soviet style propaganda. It's horrible, really nasty.
What role has the media played in combating against your father's party, such as the opposition party, in the development of the political landscape? And what are the challenges or issues that have come up as a result of the media in Israel?
Well, the main opposition in Israel is the media. They're like, they don't even try to pretend to be fair and balanced. They're completely one-sided. Every elections, they are, recruiting themselves for the other side, for the other candidate, and just give everything they got. Israel been through a really deep revolution since the rise of social networks, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, that gave the majority of Israelis, because unlike America, in America, you got 50%, roughly 50-50 Democrats, Republicans. In Israel, in the Jewish population, you have an overwhelming majority of conservatives, but they have absolutely zero representation in the media. And since the rise of the social networks, for the first time in Israel history, the conservative majority has a voice and could really change the narrative in the discourse in Israel. Of course, it doesn't have the power that the mainstream media has, but it's done a lot of it's done a big change for that. And of course, now Facebook is starting to to shadow ban conservatives in Israel, including my dad, including myself, and starting to censor conservative content and activists in Facebook. So the freedom of speech in that way is in a slippery slope, especially in Israel, because besides social networks, conservatives has nothing to express themselves. So that's a big risk.
No, that's so true. Absolutely. I did want to talk about the space launch. I almost forgot because there's so much other craziness going on this past weekend. But the U.S., as you know, had a successful space launch yesterday. Looks like Israel was trying to make a lunar landing that failed recently. Do you know if your dad's going to push for a second attempt soon?
I heard they do a second attempt, but it's not, it's not exactly, it's more like a private company, like SpaceX. It's like an Israeli company, but it's like a private.
Right.
They're trying to land in the moon. But Israel launched a lot of satellites, and relatively to our size, we have the most satellites in space per capita. Not a lot of countries in the world launch satellites at all, and Israel launched a lot, so that's pretty special.
No, that's amazing, especially for a country the size of Israel. Yeah. As far as the media, how do they play specifically? I know they're very much tied to the opposition party, and they pretty much are the opposition party, but how do they play into the political arena and the forming of a new unity government in Israel? And how does that look going forward, in your opinion?
Well, they try to prevent it as much as they can, and once they fail, they turned on the guy that they were, that they were pushing forward the whole time, and starting to talk against him because now he's the enemy for them, because he joined the unity government with Netanyahu. So it's they just use the politicians as puppets for their own interests. So as long as the politician is on their side, they make a god out of him, and once he's failing them and disappointing them, they will crush him. They will get rid of him. They're not sentimental.
I can imagine. Yeah. If you don't mind, we're at the end of the actual questions that we had curated initially from our members and myself. If you don't mind, can we take a few extra questions here from the audience?
Yeah, sure.
Sure. Fantastic. Thank you. So, what is your opinion of President Trump's Middle East peace plan? Is it viable, or should Israel be making all of its own decisions about its land?
Well, I think the Prime Minister of Israel, he flew to Washington, as you all remember, and for the presentation of the plan. And ever since, he is very supportive of it. And I trust him, and I trust the president to get the best outcome for Israel and for the Middle East and for the entire region.
Great. Totally different topic here. We have a question from someone that says, what is your opinion of the freedom of worship on the Temple Mount? Should Jews be allowed to pray there freely?
Well, it's a very sensitive topic. So I support, the status quo. I think, there's much more urgent issues. The two major issues, as I said before, is Iran and the deep state in Israel and the foreign NGOs. I think that's not, the most pressing issue right now.
Absolutely. And to that point, there's a question in the chat from for Abraham Chamoy. He's asking, can you provide your thoughts to compare the failed coup impeachment against Trump attempt to the current coup attempt by the left in Israel over cigars, champagne, and positive press, which they hate him getting?
Exactly the same thing. It's the same methods by the deep state colluding with the media.
So.
The only difference, sadly, is that America is a real stable democracy with checks and balances, and one bureaucrat, as evil or nasty as he is, cannot make a coup. They tried, but they cannot. You got Congress to overlook it. You got the Fox News and other conservative media to expose the deep state corruption and wrongdoings in Israel. There's no Fox News, and there is no checks and balances. You've got the judicial branch having no checks and balances. In America, for example, the Supreme Court judges has been elected by the president, that's been elected by the people, by the American people, and then go through a live Congress hearing by the American people representative in Congress. In Israel, the Supreme Court judges elect themselves. It's, the nominees are being elected in a closed committee with no protocol, not live television, that the judges, the existing judges have a veto on it. So they just keep replicating themselves. So, they represent maybe the whole judicial system in Israel has really totalitarian powers. One or two rogue and corrupt bureaucrats like the Attorney General of Israel can hijack the whole country and put it into a, shenanigan for 4 years, like what's happening in Israel now for cigars. And they're, an article in a gossip, a gossip article. They're saying it's a bribe to get a gossip article. It's absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
And it's a long story. He does it because he's being extorted. It's a long story why he does it. But it doesn't matter. Even in America, if you have a very powerful bureaucrat that's been extorted to get the head of the president, he cannot get away with it because you got the checks and balances over him. In Israel, there's no checks and balances. So one rogue bureaucrat can pretty much, this is what they're trying to do these days, try to do a coup d'etat and overthrow the duly elected Prime Minister of Israel. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. Wow.
Yeah.
Staying on the kind of the topic of government, and again, if you're not comfortable answering it, you don't have to, but do you think that the Israeli government will survive as a stable government for the next 2 years for the rotation to occur against, or do you think there'll be a call for new elections before they hand over the government away from Likud?
I have no idea. I hope it should be stable because there's a lot of, there's an overwhelming majority in the parliament for this coalition, but you never know what the future holds. Israeli governments are very notorious to be unstable because the whole system in Israel it's not like in America, you elect a president and then you have an administration for 4 years. In Israel, the government is being built according to the parliament, and there's many, many parties in the parliament, and you need to make a coalition of opposing parties, and it's really, really unstable. And I think one of the main goals of Israel is to change the system, to make it either more like America or like France, but just to make it more, or Britain, or even Germany, but just to make it more stable. Because we have the European model of governance, but no European democracy almost is unstable as Israel. Maybe Italy or Romania, but most of the countries in Europe are very unstable compared to America, but not as much as Israel. So I think it's a major goal to change the system.
What is the general, this is a totally different topic, but what is the general sentiment among Israelis about annexing Judea and Samaria in July? Asked Lori.
Well, we're not talking about the whole, the word annexation, it's not the right word. The right word is applying the Israeli law, because you annex a territory that you acquired, that you occupied from a different country. But Judea and Samaria, Israel didn't took it from another country. Israel took it in 1967 from Jordan, and Jordan hold that territory from 1948 illegally, without the recognition of any country in the world besides Pakistan, and maybe Britain as well in some point. But none of the countries of the world recognized Jordan's control of the country when Israel took it over in 1967. And again, the whole land from the river to the sea, again, it's only the size of New Jersey. We're talking about 30 miles, the whole width from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea, and 80% of it, it's the West Bank or Judea and Samaria. So all this land was designated to be part of Israel in the San Remo Accords, which is the agreement of all the winning powers of the First World War, which is Britain, France, the United States, Russia, Japan. They all came together in 1920 to the town of San Remo in Italy, and split and redrew the map of the Middle East and Europe. And Britain got the right to control the Holy Land and get the mandate of Palestine. But the mandate of Palestine says that Britain control of the land is temporarily, and it should give the mandate of Palestine to become the national Jewish home after a certain amount of time. And that was ratified in the American Congress, in the British Parliament, in the League of Nations, and then later on in the UN. So we have a right on this land, not only because of the Bible and all of the archaeology from 2,000 years of Jewish presence on this land, but also based on international law, American law, the UN, the Declaration of the UN when it was created, and British law, etc. So that's why the word annexation is not correct. And we are talking about implying the law on existing Jewish towns that are there anyway, and existing Israeli towns, and the Jordan Valley that is completely empty. So nobody's talking about applying the Israeli law on Palestinian cities, that they will continue having their own autonomy the same way they have since the 1990s, the same way they have today. It's only recognizing the facts on the ground of the Israelis that live there, that have rights too.
Interesting. No, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Has the coronavirus changed anything between Gaza and Israel? Has it slowed down the attacks, and has Israel changed the way they interact with them in any way?
Well, there is less tensions, but I don't know if it's because of this. You need to remember that Gaza is a proxy of Iran, and they will do whatever Iran tells them. So you never know. It's all about the interests of Iran in a given moment, what's happening with Gaza. So you never know, what can happen there. But right now it's pretty calm.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. a question regarding the riots. This is interesting from Ophir. I guess he wants to know regarding the rioting going on in all the states right now. One of the many ideas is to use paintballs to tag individuals in the mob so they can be identified as they come out of the mob for arrest. If it was up to you, what would you do to combat against all the rioting that you're seeing going on, or what would Israel do?
Well, Israel is facing a very similar problem. The same way that I assume that most of these rioters are getting, it's organized by George Soros and a lot of his colleagues. And just today there was a video that somebody caught on video, a guy paying money as salaries for these rioters. We have the same problem in Israel. Anarchist groups heavily funded by foreign organizations, by Soros as well, and by people that connected to Jeffrey Epstein, by the way, and that's very interesting. Former Prime Minister Ehud Barak was a good friend of Jeffrey Epstein, and he's financing a lot of the radical anarchist organizations in Israel.
Wow.
Making at the time of the when the coronavirus was in its peak in Israel and everybody was supposed to stay home, they were going on the streets, infecting people, infecting each other, making riots, calling for my assassination. By the way, there's a video of a lot of this anarchists calling specifically to kill me, to kill the prime minister. The Israeli police, of course, doesn't do anything. The Israeli police is a complete, are complete cahoots with them. And I would say in order to solve this problem, or at least combat it, you follow the money. See where the money comes from.
We're used to hearing that expression in this country. Yeah.
Yeah. And especially, that will be outrageous. I mean, Israel is used to foreign countries interfering in our internal affairs and making riots here. But Americans are not so used to it. And I think if you follow the money and you discover that, foreign countries are involved with it, I don't know if that's the case in America. I know that this is the case in Israel. But I think the American public will not be tolerated for foreign countries interfering in your internal affairs the same way that Israelis are so tolerated for this. So it's something worth checking. That's my tip.
I gotcha. No, that's we're too used to following the money here. I feel like that seems to be the key to everything.
Yeah.
Is Israel allowing? Do you know if Israel's allowing China to bid on contracts, given that it's been very secretive about the coronavirus, as everyone's seen? Do you know?
Well, obviously, I have no idea in such matters. Israel is doing businesses with almost every country in the world, but always, a very close coordination with the United States. So I can say generally.
Sure. So a question from Abe. What is the feeling of Israelis about American Jews? And he says, we apologize for so many of us being, of American Jews being so far left, which by the way is true. I'd say like 90% of Jews in America are left. I don't know why. Maybe you have the answer for that one.
It's 80%.
80, 90, who's counting, right? But he wants to know that basically do Israelis see American Jews as a political enemy or just ignorant as many of us do here in America?
No, listen, we have great friends in the Jewish community in America, but sadly, they're becoming less and less. And it's heartbreaking to see that all the leaders in BDS, boycott of Israel, all these movements are led by Jews, and a lot of the money that comes to NGOs in Israel that work 24/7 to destroy Israel from within and to destroy the Jewish character of Israel and the Jewish nationality of Israel, a lot of the money comes from Jewish billionaires and other people in America, and it's very sad. I think it's the organization like yours and other Jewish organizations and conservative Jewish leaders in America need to put the finger on this matter, and either try to stop all this money coming to Israel, trying to destroy us from within, or counterbalance it with, creating their own conservative NGOs in Israel to combat the radical Jewish lefty NGOs financed by America. So, it's a big problem, and it's very sad.
Yeah, hopefully the percentage is dropping. I mean, I hear everyone say between 70 to 90%. It's hard. I think you can try to educate them, only so much, but how would you, I guess, approach the liberal Jew in Israel? I mean, is there a strategy that you've implemented to change
In
minds
Israel
over there?
or in America?
In Israel or America?
Well, the ones in Israel just copy, whatever they see from the radical progressives in America. It's the same, it's the same slogans, it's the same, methods, through the deep state, through the media, brainwashing, etc. I would put a lot of the persuasion energy on the people that are, in the middle, they don't have much political views, because the one that are, the one that leading all the radical progressive movements, there's nothing to talk to about with them. They're brainwashed, and for them, trying to convert them is trying to convert somebody's religion. It's almost impossible, and it's not worth the energy. So I would go for the people in the middle, or the people that don't have any political opinion, don't care. All they care about is the Kardashians. Go for this people. For the people that are obsessed, in the university and all these student bodies, radical, the organizations that about Antifa, these kind of people. There's nothing to talk to them about. You'll never persuade them.
Yeah, no, that's very true. Very true. Couple more questions, if you don't mind. I really appreciate you being so kind with your time here. Rachel asks, you said a while ago that you're paying a personal price with putting yourself out there and fighting for your opinions. Obviously on Twitter, you do that a lot. What keeps you going? What do you wish to change, and what do you wish to do for the people of Israel moving forward?
So that's a great question. I pay a heavy price. Every single day I've been lynched. I'm being, going through a lynch by the Israeli media, and they don't like me expressing my views. They don't like any conservative expressing his views, but especially they don't like because I am, obviously the words that I say has great exposure in Israel, and I say, I don't care. I just say what everybody thinks, but is afraid to say. So I just say it as it is. I have nothing to lose. And the reason I'm so active on social networks, it comes back to what we talked about before, is that there's no Fox News in Israel. There's no conservative media in Israel, hardly. And I became sort of as a news tool myself for, conservatives that has no voice. And I feel like I'm speaking on behalf of a lot of Israelis that don't like the wishy-washy, conservative fig leaves that you see in the mainstream media. You have some, there is 100 radical lefty journalists, and once in a while they have one fig leaf that, a conservative with a yarmulke that doesn't dare to speak 1% of what he believes in, because he's afraid his or her, whoever, the fig leaf is are afraid to lose their job. So I don't care. I just say things as they are. And I don't like the price I pay. It's of course it's taking a toll, but I don't have any other alternative. And what you said, you asked me what I wish for Israel. I wish for Israel to have a free, balanced media market, to have a voice for conservatives, at least one, but to have a strong Fox News like our media tool in Israel. That's why I wish Israel would have.
Maybe we need to do a fundraiser in Texas. Find some rich conservatives. I think we might be able to be onto something here, Yair.
I think that a lot of the conservative, whether Jews or Christians, that are very supportive of Israel, need to understand they donate for this, they donate for that in the old city in Jerusalem, or the settlements. This is not what important. The most important thing for an American conservative that cares about Israel and want to help Israel is to help creating or supporting existing conservative media, because without it, Israel is in a grave existential threat, because Israel will collapse from within without a strong voice that supports our right on this land, that supports our right to be the only Jewish country. Once, all the elite in Israel don't believe in the Zionist idea. All the elite, the academical elite, the judicial elite, the media elite, the arts, all of that, they think that a Jewish state is a racist thing, that the Jews don't deserve to have their own country, that Zionism is racism. And they're a minority in the country, but they have so much power. And Israel won't be able to sustain itself for the long run without a strong alternative voice in the public discourse to represent the majority of Israelis. So I think this is a really existential, crucial thing for Israel.
Someone asked, why not start a fair and balanced news channel on YouTube and then migrate it to TV? You could focus on key news stories at first. Is that something you've thought about utilizing on YouTube?
Yeah, who knows? Maybe I'll, start my own podcast or something. I'm thinking about it. YouTube is still not, most people in Israel still watch the mainstream live television of the news. So, they will watch Netflix, but they usually will watch the regular news as well. So it's not that developed still here, like YouTube Live and all of that. But eventually it will get there as well. Everything is moving to the internet and online and, on demand and all of that. So that's a big hope, I think, that Israel has, that the media markets will change and just, all the limits will be broken through the internet, that there's no regulation and no limits there.
Absolutely. And I see we're getting some more support from other members here, wanting you to come to Texas, give a presentation, because I think not just the Jewish community, but we have a very strong Christian, a lot of Christian members in our group, and both sides, give a ton of support to Israel. So definitely an initiative worthwhile taking, Yair, for sure.
I love that. Can't wait.
And if just to kind of end things off here, if you could just kind of give us a little bit more background and context of what you're doing with Shurat Hadin, and what are your plans for over the next 6 months to a year? Where do you want to see Israel? Where do you want to see yourself? And what do you foresee the biggest challenges and obstacles moving forward in the coming year for Israel?
So regarding Shurat Hadin, it's a great NGO, but I don't work there anymore. And regarding Israel in the next, I guess the biggest challenges that Israel has in the next 6 months is overcoming the coronavirus, especially in the economical aspect of it. Of course, a lot of businesses are in bad shape, like there are in the rest of the world, because everything was forced to shut down. A lot of industries are shut down. So it's overcoming this obstacle, and we got the challenge of applying Israeli law and sovereignty in the Jewish communities in Judea and Samaria. And I think that's 2 big challenges for the next 6 months.
Do you see yourself traveling anywhere across the country, or are you staying in Israel? What are your plans specifically as it relates to?
Right now, there's hardly any places in Israel you can fly to. It's very random countries like Greece, Montenegro, Seychelles Islands. It's like Israel created from some countries that are in good shapes with the corona, like a free zone between them that tourists from each country can visit. But there's a lot of limitations. I don't think I'm gonna fly abroad, but who knows? But I promise that Texas is in the top of my list. As soon as the limitations are off, I'm coming to Texas.
That's amazing. No, we would love to have you. And then finally, if you're comfortable with it, hopefully it's not too personal, but any funny stories or one funny story that you feel comfortable sharing that's related to, you know, foreign agents trying to befriend you, something that's happened funny in your life where you're like, look back and you're like, yeah, I have an interesting life. This is interesting.
Well, you know, if I had foreign agents trying to befriend me, they probably did a good job because I never uncovered them. So who they are.
That's
But who
hilarious.
knows? You know, you never know. No, I'm kidding. I trust I have good friends. I have a small circle of friends that, you know, like family to me. And, you know,
Awesome.
I don't really get in touch with people. You know, I never meet people online. You know, I only, you know, if I meet new people, it's like, you know, through friends, etc. So.
And finally, just a closing message, a message that you think Israel wants to share with the world, would want to share with the world, and any other last closing thoughts about the U.S.-Israel relationship or anything else for that matter.
Well, I think that Americans need to understand that the Israeli people love them. Israel as a country is the most reliable ally that America have in the Middle East and probably around the world. There's no more, it's not just an ally, it's not just an alliance of interests, because it's an alliance based on values and shared history and shared civilization as well. So it's very, very deep. There is a great fond of the Israeli people to the American culture, American values. Every Israeli dream to visit America, you know, America visiting, you know, New York or LA, it's like top of the list of every Israeli. And Israel will always have the back of America.
Beautiful. Absolutely.
And Texas.
And Texas. It's its own country in itself, right?
But I have to say that a few months ago, the governor of Texas was in Israel, and we had dinner with him and in Jerusalem, and he's a really impressive guy, terrific guy, Abbott.
Yeah, Abbott.
And
I will let his aides know that you said that. That's
yeah,
awesome.
He also invited me to Texas, so now I have 2 reasons to come to Texas.
There you go. And I would be remiss if I didn't ask very quickly before you sign off. Is your dad happen to be in the house where he can pop in and say hello?
Actually, he's in a meeting right now, so
It's worth a try, right?
I would organize it next time.
Now you tell me.
We'll make it.
I'll have to get on to you, Yisrael Stefanski, about that one. Well, awesome.
We'll come to Texas, so it'll be even better.
Hey, we would love to have him, and we will set up the most amazing gala event for you and your father, like you've never seen before, Texas style.
Thank you
Well,
so
Yair,
much.
thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. So great to see you, and God bless the people of Israel. We hope everyone stays safe and healthy there, and thank you so much for your time. And of course, you and your father, your whole family is welcome here anytime. So really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. It was my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. And everyone else, thank you so much for being here. It's been the latest installment in DJC Online, and we will have future events online and here in the future, in the near future. And we have some exciting announcements for our first in-person event since this whole coronavirus thing took over. Thank you for those who answered the poll. I'm going to send another poll here shortly via email. But it looks like everyone's ready to get back into it, and they're tired of staying at home, and I don't blame them. But we're going to take all the safety precautions, and feel free to reach out to any other questions. But we have a whole list of our safety guidelines, and we will have information on some really exciting events coming up. So thank you all for joining us. Yair, thank you again.
Thank you so much.
Have a great rest of your weekend and a great week.
Thank you.
Take care, y'all. Bye.